Here we are. It's the beginning of the end, Act 3 of Dragon Age 2. And I'm going to be doing this over the next 2 weeks. Why 2 instead of the usual 1? Well, I've been a little busy because I decided to sell my home. I've had way too many plumbing disasters around here. I'm just not going to put up with it anymore. And unlike Hawke, I can go while the going's good. Hawke is stuck in Kirkwall. But it's not just because the game is set in Kirkwall. I mean, that's a valid reason after all. But it's also because Hawke has no motivations whatsoever. The game is on rails. You have no choice in what you do. This is, laughably, the exact opposite of Varric's point in the game, as he discusses those stories that he creates.
I just started that serial. It's got 10 chapters to go.
Well, yes, but you know how it ends. Just tell me.
I've got an idea, but the story will go where it wants to go. The characters drive it, not me.
I think they were probably trying for a wink at the audience. He's talking about you guys. You make the story. Yeah, like putting a hamster on top of a model railroad suddenly makes him an engineer. I've gotten a few messages from people about DA2 who find it preferable as a game. And as always, with my opinionated reviews, to each their own. This is not a declaration of what is and is not quality. Nevertheless, DA2 isn't terribly popular with the fans, and a significant reason are the points that I previously covered. You have no control, you're not important no matter what people might tell you, you have little to no motivation for your actions, and the game confuses everyone's an asshole for being edgy. Varric's description is something Dragon Age 2 completely and utterly fails to live up to. The story is their story. You just get to participate in it. Now, what is notable about Dragon Age 2 historically is it's the first inclination of what we were going to get with Mass Effect 3. Mass Effect 3, which tied up the original trilogy of games, was met with a massive outcry, even a lawsuit over false advertising, and has a stigma for the awfulness of its ending.
As far as Pied Piper is concerned, he's as pointless as Mass Effect 3's multiple endings. I mean, he's a completely useless appendage, and we all know it.
I mean, Mass Effect 3? Harsh.
What was particularly notable was the way that the game industry and supporting media rallied to the game's defense, so that there was a clear and obvious divide between those who are on the side of the creation and those who are on the side of the customers. And man, was there hostility. I don't just mean you're wrong, but it came out as, you self-absorbed, small-minded members of the great unwashed wouldn't know true art if it tapped you on your sloping foreheads. One game journalist said, "You need closure? What's wrong with you?" Apparently, these people reviewing Mass Effect 3 never bothered to play Mass Effect 2 to know that almost half of the game is devoted solely to giving people the closure they need. Jacob flat out calls it closure!
Gonna go take care of a little unfinished business. I imagine everyone else is too. Getting some closure, you know?
Oh, and what happens if you don't give him closure? He and everyone else fucking dies, yeah. Saying that about fans of Mass Effect is like saying to fans of Resident Evil, you actually want zombies in this game? What's wrong with you? This was but a sample of the overwhelming sense of snobbish arrogance on behalf of the gaming industry and press that these plebes dare to not swallow the high art clearly on display here. This wasn't universal, of course. There were exceptions. As I've said elsewhere, you've obviously fallen through a wormhole if The Guardian is on the side of the soulless megacorporation and Forbes is on the side of the downtrodden consumers. But as a general rule, if you reported on games, hosted conventions, found yourself often working directly with the game industry, you were overwhelmingly in favor, and those outside of it were overwhelmingly against. Now, I don't bring this up to further ridicule Mass Effect 3, not that it didn't deserve it, but because as Dragon Age 2 unfolded, you saw the seeds for Mass Effect 3's downfall being planted here. Or at the very least, DA2 was a forewarning. The defense of Mass Effect 3 was all about the creator and their art. And if you don't like it, complaining about it is like complaining about a fine book that you didn't like. The problem is with you and not with the game. That was the issue, though. The game was more interested in being there to make its creators happy and not its players. The reason for the lawsuit was because of how much the advertising played up that the series was about your choices, when really it was all about BioWare's choices. This wasn't your story you were shaping, it was BioWare's story, and you were granted the great honor of being allowed to participate in it. Varric couldn't have been further from the truth when he was describing these games. Dragon Age 2 was the canary in the coal mine that they didn't seem to notice was gasping, in part because of other complaints, some valid and others less so. But like Mass Effect 3, Dragon Age 2 was someone's attempt at a novel and you were just riding along. Because it's a novel, there's little flexibility for you to shape things by choice, or really given the illusion of choice, as I've discussed previously. Let's take a look at the Metacritic data to see how the critics and the fans differ when it comes to Mass Effect 2 and Mass Effect 3. Now, before I throw this up here, for some weird reason, Metacritic used a scale of 100 for the critics and a scale of 10 for the fans. So for simplicity, I'm just going to take the decimal point out of the fan one and just treat it like it's up to 100 too. Okay, here they are. Just take a look at that difference there. Between critics and fans in Mass Effect 2, the difference was a mere 6 points. But in Mass Effect 3, it's a whopping 32. The Mass Effect 2 critics dropped only 5 points going to Mass Effect 3, while the fans dropped 31 points. The discrepancy between the critics for 2 and 3 is even smaller than its discrepancy between the fans and the critics in Mass Effect 2. That's how little it dropped. But fan confidence in the series plummeted. Now, what game came out between those two from BioWare? Yes, Dragon Age 2. Another game that didn't give players hardly any control over where the story went, even their own personal story. How did that go over? Dragon Age 2 barely dropped in the eyes of critics, even with some of the substantive problems that occurred because of the rushed development. But fan views plummeted. This isn't even weighted by people coming in later on, reinforcing a stigma. These are indicative of contemporary reviews of the games by fans. Now, popularity isn't the true measure of quality, obviously, but it is a good measure of whether or not your audience likes what you're doing. And generally favorable reviews versus generally unfavorable reviews, well, that is exactly my point. The company had a widespread loss of support of its customers for the first time, and the reviews by critics didn't reflect it. BioWare's management was so convinced it was because the haters were all racists and homophobes who couldn't handle how inclusive their game was, and so they ignored that what made BioWare stories great was that it made the player feel like they were part of the story. With Dragon Age 2, you weren't part of the story. You were a captive audience who could make minor, inconsequential decisions. The only real decision of substance that you can make is which one of these characters you get to fall in love with. And that's a pretty hard choice. I mean, you get to pick from the brooding asshole, the sexual predator, the one who is likely to cheat on you before they even reach the door, and the one who doesn't have a personality disorder, but cavorts with demons. That's how bad it is. The most approachable romantic option in the game is the one whose role in any other story would be villain. So that's where you get to make your mark. Which dysfunctional shithead are you going to spend the rest of your life with? Which is a bit like being let into the lowest level of the CDC and getting to choose which of those diseases you get to be infected with. So yeah, it was there to see, and nobody at the company got it. DA2 was the event in the first reel of a disaster film that everybody ignores that foretells of the massive disaster that's about to follow. Okay, so now that the Qunari are no longer a problem, that just leaves the growing hostility between the mages and the Templars in the city, as Varric recounts to Cassandra. As for right now, they built a statue to me because I am the champion of Kirkwall. Not that that comes with any kind of benefits or anything. Basically, it just means everyone officially recognizes that I'm their wet nurse. It just means that people turn to me expecting me to solve the problem when the mages and Templars are at each other's throats. And as usual, the game confuses both sides have a point here, and we should consider the complexities of the situation with both sides are ridiculously awful. By this point, the audience's reaction to this conflict is...
Yawn.
Winter is right. And she's here because, again, I'm a time traveler. Orsino is taken to talking to the crowd about what Meredith is getting up to. She's taken over the city now that the Viscount is dead, and 3 years later she's still standing in the way of replacing him with a new Viscount. So he stands on his soapbox and rants like Brian of Nazareth over her, and she gets all uptight about him because, you know, she's a dictator and all of that, so she doesn't abide this kind of thing, especially from a mage.
Sounds like you two have quite the little argument going.
This is not an argument. It's treason.
Meredith is a kind of fascist that makes other fascists nervous. She's the one that just skips past the formalities and gets straight down to stomping her boot on someone.
I think the champion's views would be appreciated. Or do you fear what she has to say?
I fear nothing. My only interest here is in keeping order and protecting the innocent.
Yeah, no one has ever used order and security as a defense for authoritarianism, except for that one time that we like to call the entirety of human history. It's not helped that this thick helmet is making things harder to penetrate that thicker skull.
You're hardly receptive to whatever gets in your way.
And I become less receptive each moment this nonsense continues.
Not many people, when confronted with the fact that they're a closed-minded idiot, decides to double down on that. I'm going to own that, turn it around and make it work for me. It takes the Grand Cleric showing up to finally shut her up and get her and Orsino to go back inside before things get out of hand. But even though she could at least shut this down, a permanent solution to Meredith's tyranny is beyond even her power. That's the big problem. How do you deal with an out-of-control Knight Commander if even the Grand Cleric can't smack some sense into her? So I've had enough of my daily task of wandering around the city for no reason whatsoever, so I head back home, only to discover the dog is apparently angry with the wardrobe.
All right, let's see.
Please don't open the door.
You've caught a burglar. Good boy.
You're robbing me, the most successful thief in this entire city? Ass. There truly is no honor among thieves, and there's certainly no brains in this one either. I'm going to turn him over to Aveline to throw in the dungeon. This is the worst kind of crime, you know. The kind against me. Well, I should probably go in and check on Sebastian, not only because he might have insight into this conflict, but also I did pay for the DLC after all.
The first enchanter overstepped his bounds.
He was provoked.
The people want to know which side you favor. Do you never intend to give a public answer, Your Grace?
What have I been asked?
About the mages. You could calm this fire if you stepped forward.
The Chantry's teachings are clear. Those who turn against them would not listen more to me than to Andraste.
That's not an invalid point. Certainly what we've seen so far is that people will claim to do all manner of wrong things, believing it's in the name of good. And it's not limited to the Chantry either. People with a cause will do awful things and use the fact that it's in the name of some good thing that makes it all right then. I've said it before and I'll say it again. There's nothing like a good cause to bring out the worst in people. The Grand Cleric is staying out of this because she is fearful that it will only exacerbate the problem. That much is clear. Speaking up risks further splitting issues, and it's not going to stop people who are going to do the wrong thing anyway. And after all, people are speaking out against Meredith, who also believes that she's doing the right thing. Hey, I may disagree with her on every fundamental point and think that star on her head makes her look like a golden age superhero who fights for the spirit of Christmas. But she no doubt believes, just like the Arishok, the Elven Revolutionary with the poison gas, and Sister Patrice, not to mention Meryl's cavorting with demons and Anna's hobby of killing Templars, that they are answering to their conscience and doing the right thing. They're not walking around with monsters inside of them, after all. Well, obviously Anders is the exception of that. But the Grand Cleric is concerned because the divine, that's the head of the entire chantry, is thinking about sending in the armies to try to deal with the situation in Kirkwall.
She is the voice of Andraste. She cannot turn the might of the Chantry against the innocent due to proximity.
What? Are you not familiar with the right of annulment? When they go into a circle and they slaughter every single person in there, no matter what. Are you going to tell me that in every single case, every last mage was guilty? Please, even you're not that naive. And you look really naive. You look like you just fell off the back of a turnip truck and aren't sure if you're a turnip.
This cannot wait.
Thank you. We cannot allow this ridiculous mage rebellion to turn into holy war.
Ridiculous? Look, I don't want to see a full-blown revolution either. We've had enough people killing people things around here. This is a problem that needs to be worked out. But I'd rather not have a revolution cause it. But nevertheless, let's not call it ridiculous when you take people against their will, lock them all in a building, and put a tyrant in charge who doesn't see their value as human beings. Okay? Suggesting that they're being ridiculous is like saying that the Ferelden refugees of the Blight were tourists. To assure the representative of the Divine that everything is okay, we're off to a meeting. It's not exactly where we would have expected to go. I mean, it's not the Blooming Rose, certainly, but you wouldn't expect the upper levels of power to be the place to have a kind of secret meeting with some important religious person.
The Viscount's throne room has been sealed off since his death. A strange place for a holy sister to be.
Yeah, it's almost like we're reusing the assets, huh? Well, there are rebel mages inside looking to commit murder. What a surprise. It's almost like every time you show up, you wind up seeing this person through the eyes of their worst enemy. You come across a Templar, they torture people. You come across a mage, they're blood mages. Come across a Templar, they're a tyrant. Come across a mage, they're slaughtering people. There's almost no exceptions to this.
Yawn.
Well, the fight is soon joined by Leliana, who doesn't seem to recognize me because I'm not standing to an elf who's babbling like an idiot. She says that these mages are part of a faction that is working to overthrow the Chantry control of the Circle, and they are likely behind the growing unrest here in the Gallows. That's why she's here, to find out more about what's going on.
I knew the hero Ferelden. Perhaps you have heard the songs I wrote of our time together. But that was many years ago. I am working for the Divine now.
As I discussed with Awakening, every one of the companions except Morrigan can die, which makes continuing the story difficult. Oghren was the least likely to die, and so was brought into Awakening to continue. Brushed off as just him being knocked out. Well, it was decided that Leliana should be a major part of the series, hence her appearance in DA2, which will lead to her playing a major part in Dragon Age Inquisition. Unlike Oghren, though, it wasn't a case of her just coming around after appearing to be dead. If you killed her, she died, and then she was brought back to life, presumably by the will of the Maker. Because, of course, it's a lot easier to raise the dead than stop a guy from dumping blood into an urn.
What would you say to an exciting trip to Orlais? I hear the Grand Cathedral's lovely this time of year.
What?
I get that a lot. What can I say? The crazy rubs off. We explain that we did what we can, but war is pretty much assured, and the Divine wants the Grand Cleric to get the hell out of Dodge. Well, she's not budging. She's here to look after these people, and she's going to do her best to do that, no matter what happens.
I'm in no personal danger. I am Grand Cleric. Who would dare attack me?
If you will not shield yourself, then I will be your shield. You will come through this safely by the Maker's name. I swear it.
Not big believers in irony in the Chantry. You know you two are just asking for it, right? This place is going to get hit by a meteor or something now. That, by the way, appears to be the end of Sebastian's third act quest. So, hope you enjoyed that. Kind of a letdown, isn't it? I guess it's made up for by the fact that he's a companion, and you get to be blessed with that scintillating personality of his. Outside, we happen to run across Nathaniel's sister, Nathaniel Howe from Awakening.
The Wardens mounted an expedition to retrace your route through the deep roads to discover whatever it is you found years ago. It's a fool's errand, and my poor brother is with them. Nathaniel Howe.
Nathaniel? Well, put me in a dress and call me a Templar.
For the last time, Anders, I don't care if she is a Templar. Stop making those transphobic comments. I suppose it's a good thing we're going to the Deep Roads. It's like the one place where I can actually take you. So yeah, we're off in there to try and rescue Nathaniel and anyone else who might be in trouble.
You're the champion of Kirkwall, aren't you? And Anders.
Making friends as always, I see.
There's no escaping you, it seems.
Yeah, I figured that one out by now.
After the Warden Commander spared the Architect, we thought the ensuing struggle among the Darkspawn might make the Deep Roads safer.
Well, the jury is still out on that. Don't Monday morning quarterback me now, Nathaniel.
As much as I enjoy the company, is there anything keeping us in these Darkspawn-infested tunnels?
I cannot leave now. When we were attacked, I was separated from the rest of my expedition. Some of them may yet live.
Crawling through blight-infested tunnels, rescuing wardens in peril. This is what I signed on for.
Well, you seem to have the best shot of rescuing them, since you apparently have the ability to teleport. Either that or you're an old Atari game, and going off the screen one direction means you come on the other one.
You live. Tamarin, good man. Are there any other survivors?
Hopefully up ahead. Well met are strangers in the belly of the earth. I hope Sir Fenley won't mind, but I set up the explosives here and there.
Whoa, we're deep inside the earth and you brought bombs along? That does not sound like a very good plan.
Corridors lined with explosives and darkspawn galore. It's not even my birthday.
You know, the worst part is, it really is my birthday. Yeah, I can't imagine what I did wrong either.
I've set explosives all along the tunnels. Blow up as many of the sodding spawn as you can. Luck to you both.
Oh yeah, you set up the powder keg and then walk away. Yeah, that pretty much is a metaphor for what my life in Kirkwall is. So we fight a whole mess of darkspawn, and basically, that's it. Nathaniel's ready to go back now, but at least we didn't blow ourselves up. Which, you know, with this team, that really is something you have to count as a win.
I apologize I couldn't answer all your questions. You may have them yet in the fullness of time.
In other words, you better wait for this... Jesus! Okay, if you're wondering what that sound was, that was my ceiling collapsing from a leak I didn't know was there. Yeah, this is going to go down well with the realtor, isn't it? Starting to think Darkspawn would be a better infestation than this problem. Now, normally I would edit this out, but this is sucking so badly now it's actually warping the real world. Play Dragon Age 2 only at your own risk. Speaking of property that is apparently cursed, why don't we find out more about what's been going on with that mine?
Catastrophe has struck, partner. We are ruined. Ruined.
That was me about 10 minutes ago.
A cart came back from the bone pit, half wrecked, with a dozen mangled bodies. The horse pulling the cart was the only survivor, and it does not speak. Town full of rotten mages, and not one can get answers from a horse.
Well, at least all the strain of your problems hasn't made you crazy. So, while you go back and try to trick that horse into telling you the truth, I'm going to go down to the mine and see if I can sort this problem out for us. Again. Well, if it's not one fucking thing, it's another around here. Well, I suppose it wouldn't be Dragon Age if we didn't fight an actual dragon. Only this is much more than what we had back in Dragon Age Origin. Instead of having to just stand around and fight the thing until it's dead, we've got to first fight it for a while, and then we get attacked by a bunch of little dragons. And then we fight it again, and then much more little dragons. And over again, this cycle repeats. This fight is not helped by the fact that I can't get these people to take their health potions when they're supposed to. I mean, come on, guys. I've already said you're too dumb to live, but I didn't mean it literally. But anyway, it's a difficult fight, but we manage to pull through the end, and we collect all of the loot. And we can finally go back and... Oh, come the fuck on. That sound you heard was the sound of a pop-up announcing that the program had committed an error and was shutting down. Well, let's hope that the autosave worked. Oh, you little bastard. Oh. I didn't know that the fight with the dragon is going to be best 2 out of 3. I feel the need to add at this point that this isn't scripted. I mean, I've scripted out some of the things I was going to say to you so that I have the coherent ideas down here. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about all the things that are happening are actually happening. They're not me trying to be clever. This is why I don't Twitch. Well, I mean, this is why I don't do Twitch. God only knows I'm twitching at this very moment here, especially that one eye of mine right now. But I don't fucking know what to say anymore. I hated Dragon Age 2 before. Right now, I can only say this is definitely the 3rd worst birthday that I have ever had.
Yawn.
Spoken like the idiot you are.